So good morning, and today we're looking at abstract work. Not completely abstract really, more semi-abstract, just because I prefer a little bit of control within a drawing or a painting, an artwork. Here I have a few examples to inspire and to guide us, but obviously you're not having to copy any of these or copy their styles particularly. It's just a starting point for you to then go off and do your own thing. Our first little project is going to be Matisse based. So this is these are examples of Matisse's work, and one of the things that he did was to cut out paper and create cutout artworks, collage style. Some completely abstract. This is the snail. I suppose there's a slight curve there, maybe. You can go completely abstract like that if you so desire. Or you've got things that are, you can work out what they are. This is the kind of thing that I'm going to be looking at today. Something that he actually did was to create his own coloured paper. He didn't just buy paper, he actually hand painted it himself. It's hard to see obviously on something this small because actually the artwork is enormous. One thing with abstract work tends to be that it works better larger really. I'll quickly run through, just very briefly, if you wanted to make your own paper for collage, watercolour paper, coloured paper, I'll just quickly run through a simple way to use your watercolours. My husband will be doing a watercolour tutorial which will be recorded and uploaded in the next week or so. He's going to do it because it's his preferred medium rather than mine. But basically, if you want to create your own coloured paper, this is quite thin paper. It's more drawing paper. It's not really watercolour paper, but it does work. It just buckles slightly more. You can see that it's not straight anymore because when it's dried it's buckled. Best way when you're doing large areas of watercolour, and ideally use the larger the brush the better, but I'm just going to do it at small scale for the moment. Wet the paper. It doesn't have to be sopping wet, just a little bit. Then get your paints. So make sure you get plenty of pigment on your paintbrush. That's if you want it dark. If you wanted it extremely pale, something like this, then you would put less on. And then you just go side to side, working your way down. To try and avoid getting it too streaky, ideally is you go over it and you're pulling it down and you overlap your brush marks slightly, which is why it's much easier to use a bigger brush rather than a small brush. The bigger the brush, the more expensive it is usually. Now, you need to be cautious about, if you keep working over it, then you begin to get sort of bobbling on the page. It begins to break up the surface of the paper, and you can see there that you won't get a particularly smooth effect because you've actually got little bits of paper coming away. Okay. You can, if you make sure the paper is wet beforehand, it helps for blending. If you want to sort of blend in a few different colours, you can go from a sunset style, and works well. This sort of style obviously works well for the sky and the sea. What you do is you go across. You take the paint that sort of gathers at the end there and you drag it along to that side, gather any paint that's there and gather it. So that's why you're sort of going to and fro like that. Okay. Very briefly, obviously proper watercolour paper is actually, here's some proper watercolour paper. It's a little bit thicker so it's less likely to buckle. This is has a slight knot to it. It's slightly rough. It's hard to see just on the visualizer, but it's not completely smooth. That's traditionally how watercolour paper is. You can still buy it completely smooth. It's very smooth on the other side. This is relatively cheap watercolour paper, and if you were going to be just painting it with colours and then ripping it up for collage, you don't really want to be using extremely expensive watercolour paper anyway. As you can see, it says rough surface, and it's 180 grams, which means that it's not particularly thick. This is more expensive watercolour paper, and it's like card, really. The thickness is like card. But if you're more interested in watercolour, then obviously pop along and have a look at my husband's watercolour tutorial when it's up. Okay, you can see this says £140, which means compared to the £121 here, which means that it's thicker. Okay. So if you wanted to do your own paper, that's fine. You can just use the cheap paper if you're just doing it for a bit of collage work. Okay, very basic. Just put a light water wash down, and then the paint over the top. It helps it spread more evenly. Right, so moving on to a Matisse style cutout. This is an example of one that I did with another group. Hopefully you can sort of see what it is. It's a sort of hare or a rabbit, and then decided to put on an extra bit of colour, so the moon, the eye, a little bit of grass over here. And you're welcome to go completely freehand, just draw out something. Obviously you can see this is a human shape, but it's very abstracted, and you can just do that freehand, really. You don't have to be precise. If you want something either more precise like this, or you're you know, are a little bit nervous about doing something completely freehand, then I'll quickly show you how I did the rabbit. So I took some paper and I put the rabbit down, and underneath it put my carbon paper. I'll put it this way around. There we go. So rabbit, carbon paper, and then the normal paper. And then what I did was I just broke the animal up into block shapes. So here you've got the shape of the ear. I'm just drawing around with a biro pen here. And then I broke up this part of the ear, inside. There's no right or wrong way, it's just looking at the image and deciding what you'd like to do with it. I will leave out certain areas so there are gaps, but you don't have to. There's his little mouth area. And body, I'm doing his sort of stomach there. And then got the leg. I should have put in my own little foot there. And like that. Put a shape in here, and then his leg here. And bit of space there. Right. I didn't bother sticking it down with any tape because I was being relatively quick about it. Flip it up, check that it's all right. Yep, here we go. And then all I literally did was cut it out and stick it down on another piece of paper. So you can see there what I've done. And I sort of fiddled with him slightly, left slightly bigger gaps in some places, but it doesn't really matter. Like That's, the face is twisted up slightly more than that picture. I just played around with it. Obviously remember to put down all the pieces first into the arrangement that you're happy with before sticking it down. Now as you can see, I've got slight black marks around it because when I cut it out you could still see the black marks. You either need to cut very much inside so you don't get those black marks, or you simply flip it over and use the opposite side where there aren't any. I left it this way so that you can compare and see how it's worked. But if you want to avoid those black marks from tracing, then you might need to flip the image so you're using it the other way around. Okay, so that's one example. I thought I might have a go at doing something with a human figure. So I've decided to do the girl with the pearl earring, and we'll just see how it turns out. I haven't done it before, so I'm just playing around. One of the reasons why it's quite a good idea, if you're just messing around, if you're using a carbon paper, it makes it a little bit quicker and easier. So I'm going to do the outline of her face up to here, and I'm not going to put her scarf in. So I've got the outline of her face, and then I'm going to do the circle for the pearl earring because that's quite important for her. And because she's wearing clothes, I'm going to keep the clothes part of it in. I'm going to do this top bit here, and I'm going to put in her neck. And then I'm going to break up the clothes into arms, body. I'm going to put in this bit of her scarf is going to be complete, like that. And I think all of this section will be one. And then that will be another section, and that will be another section. Okay. I'm going to have a go at cutting her out. If I haven't already managed to lose my scissors. Okay, so I'm going to cut her out. But this time I'm not going to leave such big gaps between the parts of the body. I want her fairly complete with just little spaces. So I'm just cutting around her. Right, when it comes to putting it back together, it'll be like a little jigsaw, so you might find you end up cutting a bit that you didn't mean to, but don't worry. You have to remember how it all goes back together again. Okay. I'm going to pause just for a sec whilst I'm cutting this out. I'll come back in a sec. Okay, so I've cut out all my bits, and now I've got to try and put it back together, remembering where she goes. I'm going to put her on a white background. Right, I think that's goes there, I think. That's her face. And that went here, I think. Arm. there, and that went there. I'm just going to cut this little bit out a little bit more so there's more of a gap, so you can see the white line. There we go, of the girl in the pearl earring, Matisse style. That was reasonably successful. I think I might actually cut out, I happen to have at hand a little piece of yellow orange card here. Not a perfect circle. It's a bit fiddly, but you'll get the idea. And stick that down on there. There we go. Okay, so we have human figure. There's a few bits sticking up, that's a bit annoying. Trim those. I obviously didn't cut really slowly and carefully. Precise cutting obviously works a bit better. You don't want extra bits. And then just once you're happy with it, then you can glue it down. Don't glue it down until you're completely satisfied. That's quite effective. Or you've got the rabbit one where I left bigger gaps in between. Or you can go completely abstract and just put some random shapes together. As in the snail. But to make it look particularly impressive, you would need to do it maybe at least 5 or 6 foot square, to be honest. Okay.